Dear participants, good morning and welcome to the Regional Environmental Center for Central and Eastern Europe. It's my great honor and pleasure to have this opportunity to address you at the opening of this meeting, to greet you all on behalf of the REC. I prepared a couple of slides that I would like to show, but this would require my colleague here to just run, I think, the presentation. Yeah, or at least, yeah, thank you. But still, I need, yeah, that one. Yeah. Okay, so for those of you who are not that familiar with the REC, I can run it now. Yeah, thank you. So for those of you who are not familiar with the REC so much, the REC has been operating since 1990 with the mission, as you can see here, to assist beneficiary countries and all beneficiaries in solving environmental problems. And it's been working based on a charter signed by 32 countries, governments of the countries, and European Commission, with the head office here in Szentendre in Hungary, and with a network of offices throughout the region of the Central and Eastern Europe. However, we have operations going beyond this region, as you will see soon. So over time, the REC has developed its expertise in a wide range of areas related to environment, such as those dealing with civil society or stakeholder engagement or education, to those such as environment and health or management of water resources. These will be presented to you later today, this afternoon, actually. But also there are other issues such as climate change, clean energy, sustainable mobility, etc. The REC's work targets all groups of stakeholders. So not only governmental, but also non-governmental, academic, business sectors, civil society in general. And as I mentioned before, we try to also to transfer the knowledge and the lessons learned from the region of Central and Eastern Europe to other regions. And in addition to current projects being implemented in the Central and Eastern Europe, we are implementing projects currently in Eastern Partnership countries, Central Asia, Middle East, North Africa, and also Latin America, on a number of topics, as you can see here. According to the new strategy of the REC for the period 2016-2020, the organization is mandated to support basically, or to get engaged into all major processes in the target region. And there are several examples, implementation of the Southeastern Europe 2020 strategy, especially the part related to environment, transformation of Eastern Partnership countries, implementation of EU policies in all beneficiary countries, and also transition to circular and low-carbon economy. And there are three key results that we would like to achieve by 2020, according to this strategy. The one is to strengthen the environmental governance in the region we deal with, to strengthen low-emission development, enhance resilience to climate change impacts, and also foster sustainable and healthy lifestyles, and to improve the natural resources management. Well, this is the contact for you that might have questions for this. As for this very meeting, we find it very important as it will result in a very concrete output, which is a regional civil society statement, which will feed discussions at the upcoming session of the UN Environment Assembly. And I would say your active participation is essential for the success of this meeting. We highly appreciate the opportunity to host this meeting, the Regional Stakeholder Consultations for Europe, and I would like on behalf of the REC to express our gratitude to our partners, UN Environment and European Environmental Bureau, for providing this opportunity. On the other hand, I am sure this is really a right place to convene events connected to environment. As some of you may know, this building is a zero-emission building. So we have a heat pump, we have a solar panel, so to moderate temperature and generate electricity. And actually, this is a demonstration building which is also used by other organizations from Central Europe for trainings, workshops, and other events. I hope you will also like the surroundings of this building, the green area around, and also the lovely Danube River, very much in the neighborhood. Despite the two challenges, I would say, one is not so good weather, and the other one is fully packed agenda for today and also for tomorrow, basically, until the closing of the event. So, well, let's try. In closing, I would like to thank you all for coming to Saint-André, to the REC, and for your participation at the event. I really think your active participation is crucial. That is what we need, basically, to come up with a good output of this event. I'm also thankful to my colleagues from the REC for the efforts invested into the organization of the event. I don't have any concern it will go very well. Thanks a lot. And I wish you all a pleasant stay at the REC in Saint-André in Budapest to the extent possible, given this agenda and the time available for other activities. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Alexander Juras. I'm the chief of the civil society unit in UN Environment in Nairobi, in Kenya, where I'm also usually located since almost 10 years now. And I would like to welcome all of you to this meeting, also in the name of the director of UN Environment, Eric Solheim, but also in the name of Jan Dussig, the director of our Europe office, who unfortunately couldn't make it because of some unforeseen obligations to the meeting today. But I and my colleague Wondi from the Europe office, we will cover up, of course, for him. Allow me to say that I'm very happy that we are able to meet today here at the REC, at the Regional Environmental Center for Central and Eastern Europe. You know, maybe not at an historic place, because REC started at another place a long time, but I think at an organization which the reasons for which it was put in place are still very valid today. Some of you might remember that REC was founded in 1990, around 1990. At that time, primarily as an organization to contribute that the the young democracies in Central and Eastern Europe, the flourishing civil society, that they had a future. So REC was an organization which supported environmental democracy, which supported regional cooperation, which was there to ensure that the Eastern European voice of governments, but also of NGOs, is heard in the international context. So REC did lots of work in facilitating meetings similar to that, of different stakeholders, ensuring, also contributing to stability in the region, and ensuring that environment, which, as many of you know, had been very high on the agenda in the time of the changes from the Eastern Bloc to the new political situation, that it stays high on the agenda. REC also has been and is an organization which supports values which are very close also to those of the United Nations, values such as transparency, as participation, as rule of law, as multi-stakeholder engagement. So in summary, I'm very happy that we were able to organize this meeting here together with the REC, and also, of course, with our partners from civil society, the European Environmental Bureau, which since many years, maybe decades, works very closely with UNEP, in particular when it comes to Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, but also Western Europe. Today and tomorrow we are meeting to discuss input of European civil society to the United Nations Environment Assembly. So, as you know, the assembly will take place only in 3 weeks from now, and maybe I should also apologize that it is just 3 weeks before the assembly, but as Sasha has just said to me, maybe it's also good, because you will remember still in 3 weeks what has happened, today. At least those who come to Nairobi, I know some of you will be there. But also we are of course aware that the whole organization of the event was a little bit last minute, but that's what happens in times of scarce funding, where you have to run after donor funding. Sometimes you get it not at the time when it would be ideal, but still we are thankful to, in particular, the government of Germany, but also the Nordic Council for their support to this event. So what I expect from this meeting today and tomorrow will be really a lively discussion, really bringing in our work, elaborating on the view of Europe, or even also of sub-regions in Europe, on the theme of the United Nations Environment Assembly. The theme is, as you know, pollution, a very wide topic, a little bit limited to 5 sub-themes, such as marine pollution, air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, chemicals and waste. But as all of you know, each of the sub-themes even would deserve a whole UNEAR, and then it might be not enough to discuss it. What is important, I think, to keep in mind that one of the reasons to choose pollution as a theme is that it is also expected that there is a new view on pollution, that many aspects of pollution which have been taken as given, as natural by all of us over the years, so that it is normal that we stand next to a car which blows out exhaust gases which are toxic, that it is normal that we discharge into our rivers, that it is normal that we destroy our seas, our marine environment by littering plastic. Now that we are questioning with the theme pollution, this very imminent aspects, I think, of our modern society and the price we are paying. And we believe, okay, we can maybe for some time you couldn't avoid it, but now we can go one step further and say, okay, this is not anymore acceptable. We will hear a little bit more about that later. The outcomes of this meeting, already mentioned, will be presented to the United Nations Environment Assembly, which brings together governments, ministries of environment from the whole world, from all UN member states, civil society organizations, business and industry in 3-4 weeks from now. And as I said, some of you will also have the opportunity to be in Nairobi and in a way physically present also the results and ensure that in the discussions which take place there, your views are at least heard. No? I should say that UNEP and the Assembly today is a rather open and transparent and participatory organization, so civil society organizations who have UNEP accreditation. They have the right to participate in meetings, the right for statements, written and oral during meetings, similar to member states. Sometimes time is a problem, but UNEP is open and is listening, and member states, I should say, to civil society. And I feel, because that's my area of work, that sometimes even there are more chances for getting engaged, for influencing decision-making processes than what is used by civil society. So there's room for even to engage more and to have more influence. So let me finish here and give the word to Uni. Again, I'm happy to be here. I wish all of us a successful 2 days. If anybody would like to talk with me about UNEP, UN Environment, REC, I don't know, so please approach me whenever you would like to. Thank you very much. Uni, up to you. Over to you, I should say.
Thank you, Alexander, for your words. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jouni Nissinen, the newly elected president of the European Environmental Bureau since...
Yesterday.
Yeah, actually already since Tuesday, but yeah, quite new still to the job. So don't ask me about difficult things about what EEB does and what it does well or not so well. I might not know everything yet. Anyway, and sorry about the all-male panel, which we seem to have here in the front now, but I promise you that it will get better during the day. Anyway, so on behalf of the European Environmental Bureau also, I want to welcome you to this regional coordination meeting, preparing the 3rd United Nations Environment Assembly, or the civil society input to that. When I studied environmental protection in the early 1990s at the University of Helsinki, a university teacher of mine, Dr. Risto Villamo, generalized the state of European environmental pollution so that in socialism, you know, socialism was still quite evident back then, there are single spots with very high pollution, be it nuclear, heavy metals, oil, or anything else. And then there are spots that are almost pristine with very little pollution. In capitalism, on the other hand, the pollution is evenly divided all over the place. Well, there must be some truth to this, because now the socialism has mostly collapsed, and we are struggling with pollution that is found everywhere, from inside the polar ice and marine algae to people's lungs and everywhere in between. Literally everywhere. Since World Summit for Sustainable Development in Johannesburg in 2002, I have followed the development of sustainable development discussions in the UN system, sometimes intensively, sometimes just on a good-to-know basis. Still, it was a big surprise to me how the Sustainable Development Goals and the whole Agenda 2030 emerged from the ruins of the mostly failed Rio+20 meeting. Most of us thought that sustainable development is already dead, and were flirting with new concepts such as the green economy. Then, all of a sudden, the Sustainable Development Goals were there, revolutionizing the whole discussion on development and the relationship between development and environment. Of course, this development still needs to, or this new development still needs to be implemented, but on the rhetorical level, the change is already very visible. But then, a surprise to another direction to me was that after 2 Agenda 2030 dominated UNEA meetings, the decision makers came up with the topic of pollution. In my mind, it sounded really old-fashioned, almost like a romantic retro theme. But of course, that was only my own narrow-minded thinking of the issue. Delightfully, I have had a chance to expand my consciousness during the preparatory process of UNEA 3. I have understood, among other things, three things. Firstly, pollution needs to be looked at from a wide perspective. It knows no boundaries, it crosses all elements, soil, water, and air. And more importantly, new forms of pollution, such as marine microplastics, surface in unexpected places and cause unexpected problems. Secondly, when we start to get a particular type of pollution under control, it often leads into a new kind of pollution that is produced in the abatement processes of the old pollution. Besides, pollution that we manage to prevent in Europe moves often to poorer countries. Thirdly, I just want to remind that in these discussions we seem to have drawn the line of what is pollution so that we exclude carbon dioxide. But even if we do that, we should keep in mind that this harmless natural substance might be the pollutant that causes the most serious consequences to us. After all, it is an old truth that nothing is poisonous and everything is poisonous. It's the amount or the dose that is decisive. Nobody of us, or, well, knowing the diversity of human nature, you actually cannot be sure, but very, very few of us buy products just in order to dispose of them and to enjoy producing the packaging waste in the process. Thus, we have to keep in mind that pollution is not a natural disaster, but a consequence of our over-consuming, throwaway lifestyle, fueled by a growth-driven economic system and exacerbated by poor regulation and enforcement and a bad pricing structure of natural resources that we consume. We can only battle pollution by rethinking our development model and growth-based economic system. We need to establish and enforce effective regulatory and financial frameworks which disincentivize pollution and make environmentally friendly alternatives desirable. This policy change requires also recognition and abolition of harmful, ill-directed economic subsidies that distort the price formulation of raw material cycles. To conclude, we have gathered here to plan a war strategy to draw from the Greek mythology, against our modern-day Skylla, a multi-headed monster that invites true heroes to slay it down. I hope that we can use these days well, create a common understanding, and make a plan, hopefully a radical one, that takes us many steps towards that distant goal. I know that we are a bit late with this regional coordination meeting, considering that the UNEA 3 will already take place in less than a month. Despite this, let us have a good and productive session today and tomorrow. Wonderful to see you all here.
Thank you, Alexander, Joni, and Dejan for the introductory speeches. My name is Jānis Brizga from Green Liberty, an environmental NGO from Latvia. I'm also a board member of EEB, and I will be chairing the morning session, and then Sasha will continue after the lunch. We didn't include in the program the introductions, but I think we have to start with that so that we know each other and we can communicate better to each other. But before we start, I just wanted to be sure that we understand what we are discussing. So the first question would be if everybody understands English very well, so we don't need any translation. Я хотел бы узнать, если все понимают на английском и никому не надо перевода. Есть кто-то, кому надо переводить? No? Very good. Okay, so we can continue in English and we don't need any translation. Thank you. So we could go clockwise and just give shortly our name, organization, and maybe also the major group we are representing. So this is a major group consultations meeting, but from the faces I see here, I'm afraid that it's only NGOs present here, but maybe there are also other major groups present. So just name, organization, and the major group. So Wandi, we can start with you.
Wandi Asnake, I'm the Policy Partnership Coordinator with UN Environment.
Ibo Farago, I teach here in Hungary at the university, and formerly I was working for environmental strategy in Hungary. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Anita Wilcox. I'm with the EEB, helping out with logistics for this meeting.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Katabo, and I'm with Hey Support.
Hello, my name is Johanna Hausmann. I'm with Women Engaged for a Common Future, WECF.
Hello, my name is Bistra Mikhailova. I'm also from Women Engaged for a Common Future.
Hi, I'm Giulia Carlini, Center for International Environmental Law, and I'm with the NGO Major Group, but also working closely with the Women Major Group.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Islam Mustafaev. I'm chairman of Ecological Society of Rüzgar, Azerbaijan.
My name is Igor Khadjamberdiev, Network Central Asia Toxic Action Network, several NGOs and independent experts on 3 countries, mostly from Kyrgyzstan.
Good morning. My name is Anna Kirilenko. I'm from Kyrgyz Republic too, ecological movement biome, and mostly major group NGO and sometimes women major group. It's very important to participate in this major group too.
My name is Nazali Vardanyan. I am from Armenia. I am president of GOE Environmental Legal NGO. I am environmental lawyer.
Svetlana Slisarenok from Ukraine, Black Sea Women's Club, Women Major Group.
I am Olga Ponizova, Ecacort, Russia.
Elena Vasilieva, Information Center Volgograd Press, Russia.
I am Julia Melnik, Ukraine head of NGO Ekoltava, energy expert.
My name is Peter Supinger. I'm working here in the REC as an expert.
I'm Kenty Richardson. I'm a member of the Board of Advisors of the Network of Regional Governments for Sustainable Development that was founded in 2002, and we are representing mostly, let's say, the local authorities, but specifically as subnational governments. Thank you.
Eva Chobod, I work for the Regional Environmental Center for Central Eastern Europe, and I am senior expert of environment and health.
Good morning. My name is Magdi Totnagy. I'm currently co-executive director of the GUTA Association of Environmental Lawyers of Central and Eastern Europe, actually together with Mr. Steven Steck, who is here as CEO. And I'm also working as an expert in different international projects.
Olga Podesionova, NGO Gomorjoba, Georgia.
Hello, Nertili from Albania. I represent Milio Contact. It's an NGO, major group for environment and the waste.
Good morning, everybody. Ardiana Kasa. I represent Albania, another vision organization, part of a major group of NGO regarding the environment issues in Albania. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Gerometta. I actually represent my NGO, which is active on air quality. I'm a lawyer too, and we're members of EEB.
Hello, my name is Brendan Dupree. I work for the Regional Environmental Center on Education for Sustainable Development, and I'm also helping with the coordination of this event.
Good morning, my name is Steven Steck. I've already been mentioned by Magdi. I'm here representing Central European University, the Department of Environmental Sciences and Policy, Science and Technology Major Group.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shpan Sopa. I come from Kosovo, and here I represent the NGO Ecovisioni.
Hello. I'm Jevdet Gagolay. You may call me Gigo, it's easier. I represent Fondazione Eshil. It's a local NGO based in Pristina, in Kosovo. and we are representing waste and youth, and we use permaculture as an ideological framework for our operations.
Good morning. My name is Zulfira Zikrina. I'm from Kazakhstan, and I am director of the Sustainable Production Consumption Center. And main activity or expertise of my field is chemicals and waste.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sasha Gabizon. I'm with Women Engaged for a Common Future. I would have been happy to say I'm with the youth major group, but I think I may be too old for that. So I am with the women's major group, and very happy to be here.
It's me. Good morning for all. Thank you. I am Azama Burkhanova, Environmental Organization, Tajikistan.
Good morning, everybody. I am Amina Bebitova, NGO Ecomir from Kazakhstan, majority group Waste and Chemicals.
Petro Botnar from Moldova. Thank you.
Thank you. So everybody has introduced themselves, and it's not so bad as I was afraid. So we have also different major groups presented here. Very good. I will just briefly go through the agenda. So we through the plan which we have today, and then we will, we can start with our sessions. So the main task of the consultations meeting is actually to get engaged with the UN environment and to learn more about the activities of the program, but also to discuss and prepare ourselves for the UNEA meeting just in a few weeks. And most of the agenda, tomorrow actually, we will work with the regional statement, which is most important, and it's very good to see that there are a lot of experts on pollution from different angles. So I hope it will be no problem to come up with a great regional statement for the UNEA meeting. But first session we will start with the brief introductions on UN environment, different programs and activities which Wondi and Alexander mostly will be presenting just shortly after a while. And after lunch, Regional Environmental Center, REC office, our hosts here, will also be presenting some of the projects they are working on to deal with the pollution prevention, and both on SDGs and cities and waste and resource management. But then after that comes the most important part, which is working groups. As it was mentioned already before, pollution is the main theme of the UNEA and also for our meeting today, which is divided in several subsections: air, water, land and soil, marine pollution, chemical pollution, waste and resources. We also separated ECA region, but then we decided that it should be better integrated in all the working groups, so we will have no specific working group on that. There are some of the flip charts, and you will be asked to sign up for one of the working groups, where you will give your contributions. So you will have to choose, are you going to air, water, marine, and other working groups. But we have a few hours today before the finish, and all day tomorrow. So I think it's some of you, at least I know, and also from what you just said, what you are working on, I guess would be happy to participate in several of the working groups, because sometimes the pollution issue cannot really be separated as we have done here. So it will be possible to switch from one working group to another one, so you could give your contributions to all the topics which you are working with. But we'll also have possibilities to discuss all the issues during dinner reception tonight, which is hosted by REC here, I understand? Yeah? So, and during night, and prepare for tomorrow. Yeah, so the most important work is actually dealing with and preparing the regional statement. And I hope we will have enough time for that, and it will be the best regional statement we have done so far. How many of you been participating in regional consultations before? So we have a good balance of people with the previous experience and the newcomers. Very good. I think I don't know if you have any questions maybe to the panelists or opening speeches. Yeah.
To the REC, let me repeat what Alexander said. We're very happy to be here. Thank you very much for hosting us. But beyond the hosting, one of the things we are actually interested in is how do we actually build our partnership with the REC in the region, and hopefully we will get an opportunity to discuss this further, because we do have interesting program of work that we are engaged with the REC. For example, health and environment is a good example, quite active in the European region with the European Environment and Health Process, but also the Environment for Europe process itself. So one of the reasons we are here is also to see how do we build that partnership in terms of getting a very active engagement from the region, not only just for UNEA, but also beyond UNEA on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thanks. That is definitely what we are going to discuss in the course of the day today and tomorrow. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Anyone else? Possibility to ask questions to our speakers? Yeah.
Yes, it's more a methodological question. Coming back to the comment of the European Environmental Bureau, which is true that the pollution sounds old-fashioned, but it's still very much needed. But the approach that is done vectorial looks very much an engineer type of approach. And I was wondering why, when I had these issues selected as an environmental lawyer, that I like to have this integrated pollution approach, why it was not choose, for example, the cleaning side of the pollution, which is the traditional, the prevention, the decoupling, then the consumer approach, because at the end what we had to tackle is serious pollution issues in some parts of the world, depollution in others, and then we have mostly in our Western Europe problems of consumerism, and I think, and of decoupling. So we should have a geometrical approach using all these steps, and somehow having the vectorial, I had the feeling that it's a little bit too much repeating each time the same kind of recipes for each of the vectors. That was my only point, but of course I'm aware that it's probably too late and it was easy, but I would like to understand the logic behind this, because somehow if you look at the history of the 30 years of environmental pollution, we started really with cleaning, and after we thought, okay, this is not enough, we have to add something. Then we have to prevent, we have to decouple. After we end up in consumption approach, and now we are in degrowth. So all those steps towards sustainable development at the end is what appears, and here I don't see those. So I think we have to be on the roots, but also using the new terms. Thanks.
Very, very good question. I think Alexander could respond, because these themes coming from the UNEA.
Thank you, Kenti. So, and I agree with what you say, and I think you should look at the way how it is structured now. Really look at different sectors, if you want, so of pollution like marine and soil. Look at that as the starting point. Now we will have 3 days UNEA in a month or so, and that will not solve the pollution problem. But I think how we look at that, we have to get into an entry and entry to really address pollution from different angles, as you said, maybe much more integrated. And that meeting which takes place in Nairobi now is that starting point. You never know what governments will decide, but I'm sure it will not be the last UNEA which deals with pollution. Pollution will be maybe even be very much in the center of the work of UNEP and of member states for the years to come. And I would also say that the meeting today is, of course, also an opportunity to highlight exactly what you have said and to remind the member states and others that maybe after they had the initial discussion to think about how to approach the problem in a more systemic or systematic way, not also including not next UNEA to come up with it completely different topics. So I think these are good comments which also can be communicated to member states via this meeting or the outcome of this meeting.
Thank you, Alexander. I think this is a very good beginning of the discussions, also related to our statement, how we want to focus our position from the major groups. We have one more comment.
Is it me or someone? No, sorry.
Yeah, Wondi wanted to speak on my behalf. Thank you.
If you allow me.
You will not like my intervention now, but I am very serious on that. So I went through the agenda you distributed very kindly. So I think that the most important one, I hope for everybody here, what comes after the coffee break. So how to understand the pollution-related approach, why it was very rightfully selected by the UNEP, which was not very well articulated in the agenda that was adopted in 2015. It's a very important one. So personally, it's me, I would be much more happy to see that you start with that one that you plan for from 11 o'clock. I know that I am not simply popularizing Alex in that sense. All other elements, but I'm serious on that, but you need not like my comment. Everything that is now mentioned also, new leadership in UNEP and opportunity civil society and so on, these are additional to that. So the subject area is the most important one. So my humble advice, but you can ask me to leave the room also, I understand, to start with the subject area and everything else after that, how civil society, how this region can contribute to that, why it's important, whether in a broad sense that was very rightly already mentioned now, it's a very general topic, whether it's air pollution, water pollution. As a Hungarian, obviously, I am not so interested in the marine pollution, but I know the plastic problem, okay? So, but okay, I'm sorry for that intervention. I'm sorry for that, but I'm very serious on that. I thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Of course, both the procedural questions and also the content are very important. It's always been discussions in the regional consultations, which is more important, but I don't think we have to divide here what is more important, what is not. We will cover both because we have to understand the process, how the UN works and how we can intervene. Otherwise, our positions will disappear, and we will not reach our goals anyway. So we have to do both, the content, which we are all very much interested in, but also we also have to understand the process, how UN is working and where we can have our inputs. So I think we can, yeah, or the last.
Yeah, one small question. If eco-countries separate working groups, so we have to prepare packages of the several parts of the pollutant, like air pollution, water, chemical waste, and so on, and put specific features of the, which is common for our eco-countries. And if, for example, I personally would like to participate at the chemicals and waste or in other groups, and at the same time on the working groups on the eco-countries, so please explain it more detail for our groups of the people. Thank you.
Yeah, there was initial idea to have separate working group on eco countries, but we can still discuss that. But that was decided that it's better to have the integrated approach, that we don't have separate group on eco countries, but that's sentences or most important problems and activities and successes of pollution prevention, decoupling, deconsumption are integrated in all the working groups on waste, land, air, and so on and so on. If we can discuss it over the coffee break, maybe with those people who are interested to have separate working group, if we have enough people for that, if we really need it. But I think we can go for the integrated approach here.
Yeah, please register during the coffee break already, so we know who's acting already.
Yeah. And Wondi wanted to respond on this, yeah?
I'm actually in agreement with you. So the context behind, I think it would be good to bring in the context behind why we are talking about pollution. For those of you who raised your hands saying you have participated in previous sessions of this kind of consultation, if you recall, the last session of UNEA had two important conversations. The first one is, as a UN entity, how do we deliver on the 2030 agenda, specifically on the environmental dimension? So if you look at the entire 2030 agenda, there are quite a number of areas where we could actually tag in pollution, from goal 3 on health to goal 9 on industrialization, to goal 12 actually on sustainable consumption production, but also the goals on oceans and territorial ecosystems. That is one part. And the second one, and more important, I want to pick the word Uni used, pollution. You are right, it's not a romantic topic. However, remember one of the key messages out of UNEA 2 was actually the ministerial policy review on healthy environment, healthy people. That was the core discussion on how do we make sure that we showcase the poor environmental quality and its impact on health and environment. So in a way, it is a good follow-up to the last UNEA. And if you remember, there were 4 key messages that came out of the healthy environment, healthy planet deliberation. One is on how do we detox our lives, our economy, specifically when it comes to the use of chemicals. Second element, we had a big conversation on decoupling. How do we make sure that we can actually separate economic growth from resource use? The third component is decarbonize, a big discussion on energy and its implication on the environment. And the fourth one was how do we create this ecosystem-based resilience so that whenever we have this kind of shocks, pollution is still a shock in terms of our economy, our lives. So it is building on, this is just to say it is actually building on what we have started. I think it's actually a very good example, and instead of discussing pollution this year and the next one talks about something completely different, it would be good to have that connection and follow up with the previous. So that is the context in which we are discussing pollution today. Thank you.
Thank you, Wondi. If you have no more discussion around here on these topics, then we could start with the with the presentations on UN environment. And Jan Dusik was not able to take part in this meeting, but one day will do his part on UN environment under the new leadership. Do you have a presentation, or you? It's on the It's on the computer. I think then we can say thank you for you and. You can stand, but you need a mic. Maybe I don't know if we have a mic for. Yeah, I think it's better if you sit by some of the mics, so and we can hear it in all the room. You want them? Yeah, I think it also will be better for you to see the screens. Thank you.
So I was asked to speak about this very difficult topic, the change we have in UN environment. Akim Steiner used to be our Under-Secretary General. Now he has the good fortunes of being the administrator of UN Development Program. In a way, it is a great thing, so that way we can build on the environmental sustainability angle within UNDP too. So the first change you can see is we also changed our website. It looks quite nice. And also even the domain name from UNEP to UN Environment. So one of the changes that we have made in the institution. We've also modified our logo a little bit. That way you could see who we are. I think it speaks volumes in terms of who this UN entity is. So we are about environment, but we are more than environment. In principle, we also deal with economic and social issues. That's our new boss, Mr. Erik Solheim from Norway. He is the former Environment Development Cooperation Minister, and then also the chair of those of you involved in the OECD, the DAC, the Development Assistance Committee. So he used to lead that process for a long time. So it's good to have him in UN Environment. We're happy to have him with all the energy that he has at the moment. Now, what are the major changes? Now, here is the nitty-gritty of my presentation. Mr. Solheim has come with a kind of new vision, energy for the institution, and this is in the context of what is called the UN reform process. Currently, there's a lot of debate on reforming the UN. How do we make it more efficient, more sustainable? I think for some of us, it's still, we're doing our best to make it very efficient. One of the key principles that he has introduced into the organization is what is called the culture of sharing. For those of you who are familiar with UN environment, there is so much knowledge in the institution, but we honestly are not good at sharing that knowledge to the wider population. And one of the things that he wants, I think we are also in line with that, is we need to share more and more of the knowledge and the information that is available internally in the organization so that policymakers, the public can effectively use it. And the second one is he also feels we are not politically engaged with the political leaders. I think he has a good point on that, and which is tied up to the first one. If you cannot communicate all this body of knowledge, especially an organization that is meant to be the science base of the UN system, we should not be keeping all this information to ourselves. We are sharing it, but I think the message is we need to do more. We need to influence decision makers, but also this need to matter for citizens, and that's one of the things he's emphasizing. And then the strengthening, basically, strategic partnership. You see a list of, these are not new for us. We work with governments, we work with civil society, we work a lot with UN entities. But he has given a special attention to private sector. We need to work with private sector. I know for some of you it is a touchy subject. It should not only be for some of you, for some of us also. When we say, you know, a blanket case of private sector, there are the rules, regulations, but the idea behind it is if we are talking about pollution, we're talking about solutions also. Where is this solution coming from in terms of research, in terms of resources, in terms of technology transfer? So there is this strong emphasis in terms of working with the private sector. And part of what we will do at UNEA 3 is also there is a partnership forum where many business entities are coming to showcase some of the solutions that are available in terms of dealing with pollution. So in addition to these key principles, he is also talking about looking at key priority areas where UN environment should focus on. And he called it flagship issues. Fair enough. Cities, for example, I think we've been not shying away. We've been working on cities-related issues, but however, in light of the new urban agenda and what is articulated through the Habitat 3 process, is if you look at our cities, they are not the most livable cities we could be proud of. If 75% of economic activities are taking place in our cities, and translate that into pollution, what does that mean in terms of the kind of footprint we have in our cities? It is really bad. Emissions, over 75% of emissions, they're coming out of our cities. Look at global waste. Almost over 80% of global waste is actually generated from our cities. So is it fair to look into cities? Absolutely. I think this is something that we support it, and we need to engage in that. And then pollution. Well, I don't have to explain about pollution. Oceans is another big issue. For the first time now, we have appointed an oceans coordinator and a big campaign that we're pushing on clean seas, partnership with the Volvo. I don't know, for those of you who are familiar with the Volvo Ocean Race, we're also using that opportunity in terms of raising awareness what is happening to our oceans. We are literally killing our oceans, and we need to do something about that. Green finance, not necessarily new for UN environment. In terms of the whole inclusive green economy work we've been doing since 2008, this has been a #1 agenda under the previous executive director. Kim Steiner was an advocate for how do we transit from the current economic system that we have into an economy that is more sustainable, an economy that actually, yes, brings revenues, employs people, but also invest back that revenue into society, into protecting the environment. And I think that is the kind of activities we've been doing. A big partnership we have, what is called the UNEP-FI, the financial initiative, where we are working over 400 financial institutions in terms of sustainable financing. There's a report that we produced not long ago. It's called The Financing We Want. In fact, we're daring to say, why not all finances are not sustainable today? Why are not finances invested in sustainable development? So that is something you can also look at. Biodiversity, I don't have to say more. We are not doing well in terms of reaching biodiversity targets. So we are looking into that more. And then the nexus between peace, security, and environment. Something he had a background in that, but not new to UN environment. We've been engaged on environment security initiative, particularly in this region, in the Balkans, in Central Asia, really looking at the links between transboundary natural resources and what that means in terms of peace building, security. So that work will continue under the leadership of Mr. Solheim. I think I should have a sip of it, otherwise. So, you may be asking then, whatever happens to the old program? So the message, basically, we have what is called the program of work that is approved by our member states, but also the midterm strategy that frames our 4 years plan of work. The whole idea is these priorities that has been introduced in terms of cities, pollution, ocean, green finance, biodiversity, environment, security. They will be fully integrated into the existing program, what we call the 7 priority programs that we have. And this is also, I'm now combining it to the next presentation so that I save you more time for discussion. Where are the opportunities in terms of engaging as an NGO or as a local authority or a business sector in terms of UN environment? So one of the key sub-program that we have is climate change. The wide range of people actually working in the different regions on a range of climate change related issues. Somebody talked about CO2. There are things beyond CO2, especially for those of you who are interested in the climate work. We have something called the short-lived climate pollutants. This is done by the Climate Clean Air Coalition. There's a lot of work going on in this region, and I think that is one opportunity that you should really get involved in terms of our climate work. So that is the first program that we have. The second one is resilience to disasters and conflict. You can easily link it to what I said, one of these new flagships, the nexus between security, peace, environment. This is one work we have been leading in the region, but also across the world. And we have also linked it to the different sustainable development goals. So I'm sure the slide will be shared with all of you so that to see where are the links and what is that we're trying to deliver in terms of the disasters and conflicts program. Healthy and productive ecosystems. This is our entire work on ecosystems. So there's a lot of work going on in the region in terms of biodiversity, forests, seas, and so that is another area where you have an opportunity to engage with us. For example, there are 2 interesting conventions that we are administering at the regional level. People from Kazakhstan, we have the Caspian Sea Convention. It's called the Tehran Convention, that is really looking at land-based pollutants and its impact on the Caspian Sea. So you have a golden opportunity if you really want to engage. The Secretariat is quite open in terms of working with a civil society organization. Again, in terms of ecosystem, we have the Carpathian Convention. This is the sustainable management of mountains. The same story. There are quite a number of opportunities in terms of civil society to engage in terms of implementing not only the convention protocols, but actually doing something in the countries who are signatories to the convention. But also it doesn't remain the work that we do. What is also interesting is the work that we do in the European region with the Caspian, the Carpathian, is not limited to just Europe. We are also taking this example, how shared natural resources are actually become a source of partnership, a source of peace building, a source of efficient use of resources, and we're replicating this in other places where we have other 5 regional offices in Asia Pacific and West Asia, and so on and so on. Environmental governance, it's another one. I think our civil society work for a long time used to be part of the environmental governance, or is still a part of the environmental governance. This is really about building institutions, building capacities. So quite a range of activities are also taking place in the context of our governance work. Chemicals and waste used to be our sub-program in the past, and now we have added air quality into the sub-program. Again, here is where you could see many of the Sustainable Development Goals, whether it is on sustainable consumption and production. I know to a large extent many of you are involved in the SCP process. And we have quite a lot of opportunities in terms of engaging civil society in our chemicals work. And if we want to talk about Minamata Convention, I would look into the new president of EEB. It was because of the Zero Mercury campaign. People forget how this thing started. We had the Zero Mercury campaign way back, long time ago. And today we're very proud to say that we have a convention in place where governments have agreed that they would do something about the use, disposal of mercury. So remember, civil society played a significant role in terms of bringing this agenda to the forefront of intergovernmental process. Today we have something called Minamata. Resource efficiency, again, part of the major work actually in this region and the engagement of civil society is a lot to do with our resource efficiency sub-program, whether it is on the inclusive green economy work. I think we have done over 15 scoping studies in a number of countries in this region, looking at the economy, looking at major economic sectors and how do we make them more efficient, more sustainable. And I think many of you, or many of your networks have participated in the context of this scoping study. Now the next level is how do we then turn this scoping study into implementation? And for that, my only answer is we need you, we need to work with you, not only with the government, we need to work with civil society organizations in giving a face to this kind of scoping studies that we are doing. Environment under review. I think this is what UN Environment is known. Maybe many of you, you are familiar with the GEO, the Global Environment Outlook. I think this is a flagship product of UN Environment, looking at the state, trend, condition of the global environment, setting out a number of policy recommendations, what needs to happen. And this is done through a consultation process. I am sure many of you have participated. I know, Sasha, you have been involved in that. Stefan from RECstream, you've been involved. In fact, the Central European University, for example, used to be one of our collaborative centers in terms of the GEO work. And this is something that we would like to continue working with civil society, but also the very recent one. We have produced the 6th edition of the Pan-European Assessment, well-articulated document, but what we need is how can you take it to the countries? It is available in English and Russian. That is not enough. We need to do more. How do we localize, domesticate these findings? It is a story about Europe, but if you only have it in English and Russian, I don't think we are telling the story. So this is where we desperately need you. Anything you can do, we could work together in terms of turning it into local languages, but also even making presentations, town halls that you could actually, as an NGO network, you can take this message to your capitals, to your communities, how we are doing in terms of environment sustainability, but how we can engage the public at large, the policymakers, in terms of implementing these findings on a practical level. I think I'm done. So basically, key priority areas aligned with the 7 sub-programs that we have. The clear message is, yes, there is a huge opportunity in terms of engaging civil society, and we are actually engaging many civil society organizations and networks in terms of the implementation of our program of work. So that is our new logo, UN Environment. Our boss says it is easier to communicate. Part of easy communication is also showcase how you can easily link. You look at an image speaks 1,000 words, something like that, there's a saying. I think that is what he's trying to do. And also the revamped website also shows you some of the flagship activities that we are doing, not only in Europe, I just picked up the European website, but in other regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bondi. I think the principles of the new leadership for sharing, engaging, and partnership are very good for, especially for engaging with civil society. So I see a lot of possibilities for our future kind of engagement and cooperation. You have one more presentation on civil society engagement, or that was combined?
I combined.
Okay, you combined.
I saved you the trouble to that. We have more
Very good.
time for question and answers.
We have more time for question and answers, and if we go faster with the program, I think that's not a big problem, because then we have more space for the working groups, which is most important part. So we're open for questions and comments from the
This is slightly not connected to what Wandi presented, but just to tell all of you, in the interest of transparency, that we have a YouTube stream, the REC does, and so everything is being live streamed. So it's just good to keep that into consideration. Anytime you use the microphone or make a comment, it's being on YouTube. So sorry, just to interject with that. Thank you.
So I take back everything I said. No, it's good. I think this is part of communication. We've been able to be in one room together to discuss this important issue. I think that kind of live streaming also assists whoever is watching. If you are watching, this is about us. So. Another challenge then I can add on, it's not only civil society, but also I don't know what you can do in terms of encouraging even ministers from the European region to engage more in our deliberations, because this is one of the challenges. We don't have more ministers especially from ECA countries engaging in this, especially in the intergovernmental processes, and there's a lot of stories they can bring to the table. So if there is one of the things you should think about is how do we ensure that our ministers are also being part of the deliberation, being in the room, telling the stories, whether it is on soil contamination, land pollution. We need those stories, and so I think if you have brilliant ideas on how we could do this, I think that is also something we should keep at the back of our minds. We need ministers to be more engaged.
Maybe you can also share the link for the YouTube stream, so we can share this also with our ministers and other organizations in our countries. We had one more comment. Go on.
Thank you. Well, congratulations on your new leadership. I'm sure with Mr. Solheim at the helm, you're going to do very well. I wanted to ask you a little bit if you could go more into detail regarding opportunities for civil society. In terms of, can you just describe to us the mechanisms how we could do that? How is that? Do we communicate with your national UN agencies on the ground, or do we communicate directly with you if we have a project idea? How do we, just really the mechanisms of these, how can we make these opportunities more concrete and accessible to us? Thank you.
So, two angles. The first one is the formal process that we have within UN Environment. We have something called an accreditation process, where we are inviting as many civil society organizations as possible to be accredited to UN Environment. So that opens a very good opportunity in terms of getting to know the program of work, getting to know what we are doing in different countries. I think many of the civil society organizations who are working on sustainable consumption production, part of our health and environment engagement, our gender work, is as a result of those who actually got accredited, took advantage of this kind of opportunity, whether it is funding, for example, with the SICOM, we had the Quick Start program, where many NGOs who are actually accredited are the ones who managed to access some of the funding that was available. That is one. So get accredited, and that's also a good pool to learn from other accredited civil society organization. The second one, in terms of, you asked about the UN. So in many of the countries, at least in this region, the UN is operationally present in 25 countries. So we have something called the UN country team. And I think that is an area where we bring in many of the agencies under this umbrella of UN country team, or there's a jargon called delivering as one. So environment sustainability is actually one pillar of this particular work in terms of country level engagement. We recently produced for this region, yesterday I had a pleasure of speaking at the Central European University, and I actually presented one of the findings we have as the 22 UN agencies who are operational in this region, what we are doing in terms of delivering the new development agenda. How do we deliver the 2030 agenda? And we have a common strategy, and I think you should definitely look at that and take advantage of it in terms of 14 key priority areas that we have identified in terms of bottlenecks for implementation of the new agenda in the region. And I'm sure many countries relate to the issues that we have identified. I was talking about the energy chapter and the ecosystems chapter yesterday, which is applicable to many countries. So first step is get to know who the UN country team is. And environment sustainability is actually one of the pillars for that engagement, and that could open a door for engagement.
Allowed to add, because I understand you are from Kosovo. So with Kosovo, the accreditation is an issue because it's not a UN member state, but you know, it doesn't close the door. So for you, as an NGO from Kosovo, the best way is to become a member, let's say, of the EEB, of an organization which has accreditation or of any other. And then you have the same access as a member of a network that has accreditation than anybody else. I'm just saying that because just recently we had to reject an accreditation request from Kosovo, so don't waste your time on that. Also, if you allow me, wanted to add, please go on our website. We have a civil society website. Later in my presentation you will find it, and the presentation will be shared. There you can find all the details on you know, what are your rights and privileges, but also duties as an accredited organization, because you have lots of opportunities, and I think sometimes it's almost overwhelming for some NGOs to get engaged. You can give written input on governmental resolutions, and they will be really shared with governments, uploaded. You can physically participate in meetings if you are accredited, not only physically and also remotely. So let's say every other week in Nairobi, what we call Committee of Permanent Representatives, which are the representatives of member states, they come together and discuss all type of issues. And if you are accredited, you can participate from here remotely with the opportunity to say something. even. So, and many more, and there are many more. You know, I think opportunities. So I don't go in detail now, but check really the civil society website. It's quite well explained there. There's also something called the Stakeholder Engagement Handbook. It's a little publication which you can download, which also describes really in detail all the mechanisms for that.
Yes, Sasha.
Yeah, maybe just to add that civil society at the global level for UNEP is organizing major groups by stakeholder groups. So we have women groups, youth groups, science groups, and environmental NGO groups, trade union groups, and I forget a few, farmers groups, and a business group. And an indigenous community group, right? So that, yeah. So one way to become engaged, right? Single parents, yes. you can join us as well. So one way to engage is through the major groups, and that's the easiest, right? And then through the major group, you can ask for accreditation because we have the similar problem in some other regions of the world. So the NGOs have to help each other to register. Some of you who have more difficulties registering because of bureaucracy in the UN organization.
May I add?
Yeah.
By my mind, it needs very different planning and schedule for European countries and for Central Asian countries. Situation in Central Asia, very different. Civil society is comparatively weak. Problem is totally corrupted in ministries. And very many NGO is really go, government organized NGO or commercial organized NGO. And they not struggle for environment and struggle for his own interest. Very weak regional REC. So, for example, our Central Asian REC, I don't listen any good project from it. So my mind, you may go more different program for this region in this water. The communist bureaucracy was bad, but world capitalism is worst.
Okay. Was it a question or more the comment? But maybe you can respond on...
Only comment.
The comment, but maybe there are UN environment, some kind of, what you can offer on capacity building for NGOs on involving with you.
I think in Central Asia, we recently opened actually a Central Asian office in Almaty. Part of the job description of this office is actually how do we work closely with government, but also civil society. So if you channel that question to us officially, definitely we should explore whether it is capacity building or some kind of activity, we could work on that.
I just have an announcement. In Kosovo, REC is starting a very interesting project which deals directly with strengthening the capacity of civil society. It's called Species. We are just yet now to see how that work out. I think they're still hiring people for the project, but we, as civil society working on environment in Kosovo, we are really looking forward to see what comes out of it, because it is true, probably from all sectors, environment is represented by probably the weakest civil society in Kosovo. So I think this program is going to help us a lot. So I don't know, maybe the same thing can be done for Central Asia.
Okay, Joni, you also have a comment or a question?
Yes, both a comment and a question. Firstly, the comment to those representatives of organizations who have not worked with the UN system before and who might get interested in doing so. I just wanted to point out that be prepared. you always have to reserve enough time for the processes. Like, you cannot, if UNEA starts tomorrow, you cannot start calling the day before if you would like to get the accreditation. You really have to prepare those steps months in advance, in the minimum. And also for the European Environmental Bureau, for instance, we have a system where the annual general meeting approves new members, so you can become a member of the European Environmental Bureau only once a year. So next time, again, next autumn. So on an international level, you really have to plan well in advance, which brings me to this actual question, which concerns the UNEP stakeholder engagement policy and its practical implications. Maybe you could say something about that now that you're talking about the stakeholder engagement, and also on practical level, I would like to know, even if we know that there is no policy emerging now, so can one still become a UNEP accredited organization? Yeah, okay.
Juni, maybe I answer on that, and for those who don't know it, so I explain maybe a little bit the context. So after the Rio+20 conference, where there was a decision taken to strengthen UNEP by, even in financial sense, by creating the United Nations Environment Assembly. Before we had a general, we had a governing council which had around 50 members. The Environmental Assembly has all the member states, what is very important because that means decisions which are taken are valid. Before, the decisions were taken by the small group of countries had to be sent to New York, where a big group of countries had to endorse them. It happened very often that was forgotten, let's say, because of a hurricane in Haiti, which took all the attention of the General Assembly. So having this body with universal membership, strengthens actually and increases the likelihood that the decisions which are taken also have an impact later on. So what was also decided in UNEP, in Rio+20, was that the strengthening of UNEP should also be something where civil society, where major groups benefit from. So UNEP was requested to almost word by word to put in place a new stakeholder engagement policy based on best practices in the international system. So the new UNEP, the strengthened UNEP should be even more transparent, participatory, open for the participation of civil society. So we started after Rio to put into, first to look what are the best practices, based on that we developed a draft stakeholder engagement policy, and as it happens so often, in a way the governments which decided in Rio that UNEP should be more open, more transparent, should have a new stakeholder engagement policy, were not able to agree on a new stakeholder engagement which is modern, progressive, which has more participation. At the end, we ended up with a policy which was more restrictive, which had more governmental control, like, for instance, certain countries, they could look at who wants to have accreditation, and without a reason, they could say, no, I don't like that guy. He criticized me when I was a minister. We veto this to have accreditation. And also in other areas, the access to documents, and it was only a few countries, they really pressured to be more restrictive for reasons which had nothing to do with environmental protection, but for political reasons. An example, for instance, Argentina was very much blocking anything because they had the vision that there might be an NGO from Falklands coming to Nairobi and embarrassing them. So they blocked the whole international development of a new policy just for that very particular problem, and also for something which is really unlikely. Falklands has only 3,000 inhabitants, and you can imagine how likely it is that an environmental NGO shows up in Nairobi. So at the end, we kind of also UNEP basically took an emergency break and said this is going really in the wrong direction. We have a danger that governments will decide on something what UNEP doesn't want, what is not in the interest of civil society, what is not in the spirit of Rio+20, and the process was stopped. So that does not mean UNEP, because Uni asked, that doesn't have a stakeholder engagement policy. Of course, we have one. We maybe don't have a document with the heading stakeholder engagement policy, no, but we had and have a way, a set of rules and practices how to engage stakeholders. I mentioned we have a stakeholder engagement handbook, which is maybe not a policy, but really shows your rights, and it's also binding for us. Despite all, there was also, you know, a positive effect, because the discussions first made many countries more aware about the benefits of stakeholder engagement. We also understood as UNEP, you know, how far can we go in interpreting the existing policy, you know, because there were some things what all countries agreed upon. For instance, to give accreditation for NGOs who work mainly on the national level. Now, before it was only had to work in at least 2 countries. Another area to give accreditation for NGOs or major groups which deal with environment and or sustainable development. All countries were in favor of that. So what we did, actually what we are doing today, we UNEP decided, okay, these elements which were not agreed, let's try to apply it and see how it goes. So today we have a situation where I would say in practice, UNEP is implementing at least a large part of the Rio +20 decision, or the spirit of the decision. I would say we are more open today than before. Another example is that now the Committee of Permanent Representative is open since roughly two years for participation of NGO. Before that were closed meeting just of governments. We do live streams of, like here with YouTube, of such meetings. We have the electronic participation. We give accreditation, unless you come from Kosovo or from Taiwan, let's say, accreditation became pretty straightforward. We hardly reject any organization. And as I have said, earlier, if you ask me, right now, I think there are more opportunities to engage, to influence, than NGOs or major groups are able to utilize. So I think the gap is really not on the side of UNEP doesn't have a good policy. The problem is there is a good policy, there are opportunities, but NGOs kind of lacking behind to make full use for many reasons. Of course, we are in Nairobi, it's far away, and many things happen there. So I said yesterday that's almost like you organize a party with free beer and nobody shows up. That's sometimes how I feel, being in charge for engaging civil society, facilitating civil society engagement. So my hint or my position is really, if I would, for the moment, maybe really leave that topic aside. I don't think, because there's no indication that those countries which were standing for a conservative approach to civil society engagement, that they changed their mind. China, Argentina, all the Arab countries, they will not, if you say, okay, next UNEA in 1.5 years we should have the policy. If you start negotiation, you will end up that's my assessment, of course, where we ended up last time. So better leave it for the moment. Observe whether these good practices continue, because it might change. It might change if I'm not anymore in charge. Maybe some guy comes who really is not interested in all the topic, in all these things. So then you might bring it up, but don't push it. I don't see now a chance politically for progress.
Thank you, Alexander. So there is possibility for NGOs to get accredited, but if you are rejected or if it takes too long, you can still approach the existing networks in the region, like EB or other networks which are open for membership. If you are from EU or Eastern European, the Eastern Partnership countries, then you can apply for membership in EB and be accredited through the network organizations to UNEP straight away. But for people to show up in your party, I think you have to provide also like a free of charge transportation system so that the people can actually get to the party.
Yeah, I know that free beer is sometimes not enough. Not everybody likes beer.
And capacity, of course, it's a lot of problems with capacity building.
But you know, even though it was a joke, of course we do that to a certain degree now. And maybe it's also worth to mention that. So we usually try to finance the participation of at least those you know, who are members, elected member of major group facilitating committee, regional representatives, experts. You know, we really have something to say. We try to do that. But I should say it gets more and more difficult. So at the last United Nations Environment Assembly, I had like $270,000 for doing that, which is quite an acceptable amount. For this UNEA, I started with 0. So UNEP didn't contribute to that, and we had to do fundraising. But also the countries who basically had decided before to have the UNEA this year and said, we will support you. It was very, very difficult, including from the European Union, which is very often supporting civil society engagement, to find the funds. So for this year, I ended up with maybe around 110,000 only. Plus, we found a foundation which was ready to directly cover travel costs. We even had to go so far, and I know some NGOs don't like it, that this year. And I'm already afraid what will happen to me because of that. This year we pay only 50% per diem. So anybody who doesn't know yet and who comes to UNEA, if you open your envelope thinking I can go home with 2,000 in my bank account, this year it will not happen. The per diem will be, I can guarantee that, enough for accommodation and food and whatever in Nairobi. No, but it is 50% of what we normally would pay. This was initiated actually by the major groups. It was not wasn't the first one who said let's go that way. No, but you know, and it shouldn't be. I don't think it's good. No, this is a way, maybe one time, to have really more participation in a difficult time. On the long term, I think it is very important that because we need money from donors, you go to your governments, at least those who can afford it, and push them. No, because it's not, we don't talk, there are so many countries, member states with money, we don't talk about much, but if you want to have also the transportation system, you know, push your countries, because we need them to take that responsibility for their civil society.
There is 2 more questions. Okay. You go first.
Thank you. So following up on your example about having the 3 beers and people not showing up, I think there's not just the issue that was just mentioned about finance, but sometimes you don't know about the invitation to go and drink the beer. So now that you have a new website, maybe it would be good to make sure that all the events are publicized in advance, because even for this meeting, it was not exactly like that. So please make sure that also people can come because they know what's happening. Because yeah, sometimes in the past information were spread out in the website and not clear. So if you want people to be more engaged, having clear messages, that is what you're doing, it's a great thing. Otherwise, we miss these opportunities.
I completely agree.
I completely agree with you, but I can also give you some information. This meeting was on the website since June 2017. Again, 2 months ago, we have actually posted it. So it also depends on how often you look at our website. But I take your point also how often we send targeted messages also to people. But it is on it's been on the website for a long time. Point taken.
And you also had a question.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to follow this question and answer session in that sense, how the regional NGOs or the country-based NGOs can be much better aware of the proceedings of the UNEP, UN Environment. I know it's more serious. How the assembly meeting will be convened, how they can attend a stakeholder consultation, In addition to that, earlier you mentioned how the regional consultation process was a very important one, you highlighted. But let me add, it's not a question, but I think it's a very important point. Local NGOs, and you heard some colleagues already here, and I remember also the comments from Alex from yesterday. Many of the civil society representatives basically engaged in the problems on spot, in their own countries or even within the countries. And where they have really very complicated problems, very weak capacities, not simply attending a meeting in Geneva or in Nairobi. So you should really, I know that you're aware of that. It's also true for Africa, Asia, Central Asia. It was very clearly mentioned. And I should also add, it's not only a problem of Kosovo, Albania, or the ECA countries. It became already a problem even in Central Eastern Europe. You remember your own comment yesterday. You cannot help this capacity building in terms of finance. It's a different story. But you could help much better, not simply taking the input from these regions to the global level, which is not bad, but at the same time also to try catalyze the cooperation within the sub-regions. So the local presence of the UN agencies, whether this is the UNEC, whether the UNDP, or the UNEP, whether the African part of that, Central Asian part of that, or the UNEP Regional Office for Europe, it would be very important one. Where we sit, it's some kind of that approach. But sometimes it would be very important, a small team meeting within a country, inviting only the neighboring countries. I clearly understand that the translation is important. You invite also the stakeholders, but also the governments, both of them. You can catalyze the dialogue between the governments, which can neglect environment-related issues. If you are not there, almost no dialogue. So that's why Alexia also now, for you at least, disappeared Eastern Europe. And from this room also disappeared Central Europe, if you correctly understand me. So please focus more on regional and sub-regional approach on spot, okay? It's not high money because it's your flight and your hotel, but it would be a very important one. And you can, again, I underline, catalyze very diplomatically the cooperation between the government agencies in the countries or within the sub-regions and the stakeholders, basically the very weak civil society representatives. I thank you.
I agree with you 200%, but let me also give you a couple of examples. What is that we do practically at the country level? Example of our health and environment capacity building, for example. We just did one in Azerbaijan, where we actually, one of the unique quality of UN environment is the convening power. We have the ability to bring as many ministries as possible. And can you imagine having 11 ministries in the same room with civil society, with business representatives to talk about health and environment priorities in the country? And it was a very interesting experience in terms of getting different ministries to talk to each other, see value in each other's. So this is one way we've done it. There are two more coming up in Georgia and Moldova. We're going to replicate exactly the same in the context of how do we get different ministries, but also civil society to engage in advancing the health and environment priorities at the country level. I think that definitely is the way forward in terms of building capacities, strengthening institutions at the country level. And then towards the end of June, we are also going to bring the three countries, Moldova, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, to share experiences based on these national workshops. What are the lessons learned in terms of improving environmental quality? Sometimes it is also about improving relationships between different sectors. So these are some of the things we have started doing. And we will continue to do that. I think the greatest impact is actually what is that we're doing at the country level in terms of taking this new agenda. Then beyond the UN environment work is also, don't forget what is called the voluntary national reporting under the new development agenda. Yesterday I mentioned Hungary as an example because we are in Hungary. And Hungary will be submitting its voluntary national reporting in July 2018 in terms of what is the vision of this country in terms of implementing the new development agenda. And I think NGOs from Hungary, they should be part and parcel of this process. They have to be, because that is how the entire agenda was negotiated. It is about everybody. So that is one practical example. Also, maybe a challenge is how do you plan to engage? So Hungary is one example. There are 13 other countries from the European region who are also reporting. So how do we get involved in terms of the national voluntary reporting? Particularly, maybe I will get a little bit selfish and say, how do you advance the environmental dimensions within these goals that will be reviewed in July? So that is also another opportunity, but also maybe to give a shout to our UNECE colleagues. They also have something very interesting called the Environmental Performance Review, where there are a set of recommendations in terms of improving environmental conditions. But, you know, for example, Brendan is, he knows very well in the context of education for sustainable development is one key pillar of the environmental performance review. How do you implement the outcomes, the recommendations of the EPRs? That also talks about strengthening partnership with civil society, working at the country level. So I think we could tackle it from different directions, but reach at the same goal of improving health and well-being, but also the state and trend of the environment. Thank you.
Let me also add something. So because you asked also a little and others about the role and of civil society and what UNEP can do, and I would say, at the end, unfortunately, I feel that we, the UN, UNEP, UNDP, but also organizations as REC and others, maybe even some NGOs from which originated in the West. Overall, I think we really failed to support, to establish a resilient, impactful, lasting environmental civil society in Central and Eastern Europe. I sat over 20 years in the same room. Maybe it was not yet, energy zero. And I have heard NGOs, some of you might be even there, saying the same things. We need capacity building. How do we find out? And that's of course a little bit, and it's maybe more complicated like that. But I think it's an indication that we really failed. I see organizations such as the REC, which were founded to support civil society at one moment, and it was most likely around membership in the European Union. They kind of felt like, okay, mission accomplished, let's do something else so that we can continue living, and allowed actually a relatively young, not yet resilient civil society to vanish. Things what are possible today in many, in particular, Central and East European countries, but also in the West. When I go around, I see these horrible posters of George Soros. That wouldn't have been allowed by civil society 15 or 20 years ago, and many other things which governments in this region, but in other regions, can do. So what I think what we did, we left civil society alone too early. We continued, also the REC, also UNEP, we stopped granting programs, we We stopped capacity building in the region, and even worse, I think we watched these things happening. No? We watched a really strong, impactful civil society which existed at one moment, almost dying in front of us, which partly led to this situation. And today we are in a situation where, you know, it is not so easy because lots of enthusiasm, which was there some time ago, is missing. As I said, donors look at other things. There's also, you know, kind of desperate try to do things like now now the business community is seen as a solution to everything, which even which again has a negative impact on civil society. I mentioned my funds, which I had before and I don't have. Those funds, I know where they went. They went into programs to support more engagement of business with UN environment, which was not the idea. The idea was to have both civil society and business. Just I don't want to spend too much time, but also we have to be realistic. What can UNEP deliver? Small organization, most of us are in Nairobi. We have a small, overwhelmed office in Geneva, a little local presence, but when we say we have an office in Kazakhstan, it's one person, who maybe plus an assistant. So you can, you know, they cannot develop the capacity of Kazakh civil society. So we need partners. I think at one time I thought, let's say, the REC could be such a partner. I think there is still a potential. I think NGOs can be partners. The EB can be, or Sasha's organization can be partners to us in doing capacity building in the region. And a lot is in fact happening. I mean, today's meeting is a sign of the partnership. But the bottom line is we have to realize that things don't look good, that something needs to be done there, and that we have to learn, you know, these are long-time changes in society. It's something what you don't achieve in 10 years and say, now, okay, this thing is done. You need to be at it, supporting it for 10, 20, maybe 30 years. And that has not happened, and that's the situation we are facing today.
I think we have to stop here, even if the more and more hands are coming up. We have to go for a break, and we come back with, we can continue this discussion partly also after the coffee break, okay? Now we have 20 minutes coffee break. Thank you, Alexander and Wondi, for your presentations and for answering the questions. As I was mentioning before, we are going to have the working groups in afternoon session. So please sign up. Outside there will be flip charts with the names of the working groups. So please sign up to the working groups so we know how many people are going to which groups, and then we can adapt to that. And we are coming back here 11:20, so a little bit more than 15 minutes. Thank you.
Just outside the program, can anybody who speaks Hungarian tell what those Soros posters say? Because many of us have been wondering about them.